Tonight on the episode, we have Ernie Davieau joining us to tell us about his encounter with a Bigfoot creature who tried to communicate with him. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Can you give us a little bit of your background prior to the encounter?
Let's see, prior to my encounter, I can keep it short and sweet. Um, I try to refrain from anything that's like a bio because I want people to understand that, no matter what, you're going to stereotype people.
Mhm.
And I'd rather um, uh, not put myself out there like that so that you don't, you're probably going to give me more credit if you knew my whole background. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm no different than anybody maybe from Appalachia or maybe somebody from Alaska or a police officer or a doctor. We have all those eyewitness testimonies.
Yeah.
So you're best off not to really look at that too much. Okay. I want them to hear, I want everybody to hear my testimony, and then you all can make up your opinion on it. Okay. But I give you a quick rundown.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm prior military. I grew up hunting um all the time, hunting and fishing. That's just the way my generation was at the time. We grew up in the hill towns of Western Massachusetts. I'm actually, and you're going to be at this place too, the
Yeah.
Cobble Critter Festival. I actually grew up in a little town called Montgomery, Massachusetts. And I went to a tiny little red schoolhouse, a one-room schoolhouse. Okay. I think it still has arrowheads. Tim Bogle laughs about this. It
Oh,
still has
wow.
arrowheads in the door. Just kidding, but it's that old.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to think. I've got a background. I've got a background in martial arts and everything else. But again, it has no bearing whatsoever on my encounter, other than the fact that I had been trained already to take in information. I had been trained to read body language. Okay. If there was going to be an altercation or anything like that. So that'll come into play. People will hear that because I hear that a lot from people. They'll say, well, why didn't you shoot? Or why didn't you try to run away? Or,
Yeah.
I was sucking in so much information that it's taken me a long, long time to come forward because you've heard me before, perhaps I come right out and I tell people, had this been your normal so-called class A sighting, okay, because that's really doesn't even put a letter on this one here, then I probably would have been able to go down to the local bar in Westfield, the city. You call it city, even though it's small at the time, and got myself a drink at the local bar and told the story. Hey, I
Yeah.
just a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or a Sabe or whatever anybody wants to call them. And people would have been like, oh, wow, and maybe bought me a drink or something. But no, this encounter actually had to envelop an awful lot of things that people are still learning about today. And that's why I take this podium. It's for the eyewitnesses and to give this message. That's about it right there.
Yeah. And your encounter is a little deeper than I think the average encounter, I would say. I mean, it's not just a sighting. There's a lot more behind it.
Yeah, I've heard that. And, I've actually, a guy that I work with, uh, probably months ago, anyways, I told him, I said, it just dawned on me. I think I would find this really bizarre if I was you listening to this because It's been so long ago for me. And when I very first, and this is something important for eyewitnesses to understand, to get it out, because you're going to have PTSD over it.
Yeah.
But as I told it more, the first time I told it is I was just hyperventilating. And then probably by about the sixth time, I had to make an agreement with myself because there's a little point in there, and I'll tell everybody what it is that it was just too much for me to kind of handle. Is
Yeah. It's
I
like
didn't,
reliving it over and over
I,
again every time you tell the story.
and that's what people listening need to understand is you're asking me to relive something that happened to me, and it's very easy for me to do that. But for me to relive it, I am literally reliving every single moment of that encounter.
Yeah.
So
It's hard for people to come forward, I think, because of stories. It is. It's the PSTD, the remembering of the being there and the reliving over and over again. So it's kind of easy to bury it sometimes rather than come forward.
yeah, absolutely is and again, that's one of the reasons why I come forward because um a lot of the forums are the water's been muddied so much.
Yeah.
Bigfoot field, okay, because we're allowing AI in there, and people figure that they should be able to do that. Please stop it. If you want to know what they look like, it's very easy.
Yeah.
Go and find some eyewitnesses, i.e., myself, who have had forensic artists work with them on what it looked like, and you will find out that out of all your encounters, less than 1% are up close and personal, and
Mhm.
we all describe the same thing because people will come out and they'll say, well, it was ape-like. What part of it was ape-like? Was it the nose? Because truthfully, if I've never met you before, I've never met your family, and I asked you to describe your mother for me, I assure you, no matter, even if I was Michelangelo, I don't think that I could draw it. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's
It was a
very
woman.
hard. Yeah, the person that worked with me on this worked with me for 7 months.
Wow.
This 2 to 3 days a week, and I was very adamant about certain things in there. So the people, um, my wish from day one was, please, somebody, please, just come out there and say you had an encounter like this, and I'll lock elbows with you. 37, 38 years later, nobody has.
Hmm.
And that's why I decided I'm going to do this, because there has to be somebody. And I have found a couple of people.
Yeah.
We are less than the 1% that are out there, so that's a really good thing. And I assure you, as I just have to add this in here, this encounter that everybody's about to hear is the reason why I don't believe that there should be a DB. Okay. I hope people understand what I'm talking about here. The only reason why people will say you need one is, first of all, they want to hunt it down and become famous. Secondly, because we really bite on research.
Yeah.
People don't know how to research. When your teacher asks you to research something, I don't know how the heck anybody even got through school. Maybe the teacher didn't ask them to do that. But when you research, you need to write down everything. What were you wearing? Were you wearing cologne, perfume? Did you just take a bath with ivory soap?
Yeah.
The temperatures outside. Who was with you? What was going on? What were you talking? You need to write down everything if you're going to go out and research for science to recognize it, temperatures and everything else. Otherwise, just admit to yourself that what you're looking for is an experience, which is great.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for an experience, then pay attention today. Okay.
The fact that you brought up the AI muddying the waters and all of this. I'm part of a few Facebook groups, even on Bigfoot Facebook groups, and it's just crazy the amount of either stolen screen grabs from movies, just any people are trying to pass off because they want to say they had an encounter.
Correct.
And
Well,
it's so different
sorry.
to hear from you that when you do have an encounter, this isn't fame and fortune and it's not the greatest thing. It's hard to deal with.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people, some people, I'll just say some people, want to have that encounters because they figure that, oh my, the most handsomest man in the world is going to come running over to me and go, oh my, you know,
Yeah.
or a guy's going to come running over to the female and do the same thing. And believe me, there are problems that are out there,
Yeah.
uh, you know, but that's why one of the reasons why I don't down anybody on their encounter. I know there's things that we do. We are not gatekeepers. A lot of the research info that we have, you would have to be affiliated with the groups in order to for us to do this, because we don't want anybody faking what
Yeah.
we're finding. Okay, because if you fake it, you muddy the water and you set us back. Like playing football, instead of moving up to that goalpost, you're losing the football and you're moving backwards. You're losing
Yeah.
the game on that.
Yeah. And it definitely ruins the, not ruins, I guess, but it just kind of adds an inauthenticity to everything that true encounters and true researchers are trying to do.
Exactly. It is just so harmful because you're going to get somebody with pertinent information and they're not going to want to share it with you.
Yeah.
Give you a good example is I just kind of, for over probably 20 years, as I just visited sites and just watched and seen people making comments and stuff on there, didn't want to have anything to do with them until I was on a show, watching a show, and this guy was an animal guy. He knew all about animals and everything. I said, you know what? If there's anybody that's going to listen to me, because what I have here is behavioral aspects
Yeah.
of what's going on, and they're showing intelligence here. So he's going to be able to relate to that. And sure enough, he did. And then from there, uh, I was on his show. He got me on a show out of England, and then Kerry Arnold, one of the best ones out there. I actually took his encounter. I got to speak with him, and he told me his encounter. And then he got on the show, and then he started doing his own podcast, and it branched out really, really huge. But unfortunately, he passed. He passed. Very sad,
Mhm.
very, very sad story. But so that's what you're doing is you're scaring some people away.
Yeah.
Some people figure, well, maybe you are, maybe you're not. No, you are. They're looking at it and they're saying, who can, because we want to tell you, believe me, when this happened to me, boy, I just thought I just had like uh really something fantastical that I could tell people and go, guess what? This is
Yeah.
real, you know? And here we are almost 40 years later or so, in the Bigfoot community. What are you working on? You're working on tracks still. And I hear people say things like, well, tracks aren't proof of existence. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go camping for a month and you go sit in a field with no deer tracks in it and you eat whatever you catch.
Hmm.
I'll sit in the field that has deer tracks and rabbit tracks and all that, and I'll eat whatever I catch. You don't get any of it. Okay. Definitely, that's just one prime example of that right there. We
Yeah.
have tracks, we know they're there. People set up things like a gifting chair or whatever,
Hmm.
and no matter uh how many fantastical things happen, like you leave a jar of peanut butter out there. Do you folks really, 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 really think that a chipmunk undid the lid on a peanut butter jar, ate it all clean, put the lid back on, and put it down? There is
Exactly.
no animal in the woods that is going to
Nope.
do that except these things. And when it happens, it just blows people's minds. And if you think that blows your mind, then what you have to face if one of them that comes out in front of you is an opportunity. You can either look at it and go with fight or flight and turn and run away. And that is the equivalent of somebody knocking on your door that you've never seen before, your neighbor. And every time you go to answer the door, they run away. Okay. It's just completely ridiculous. The things that are there, they leave so much evidence. Or you knock on a tree, or there's a lot of things that go on in the woods that happen
Yeah.
naturally. You have to become an observer. You have to become a good researcher. You have to become a woodsman. You have to become a hunter, a fisherman, learn how to forage for food, and learn how to become the master of the area that you're in. Just don't wander off into a huge giant area. Start in a small
Yeah.
area. You keep going in there and start noticing the nuances in the area, the changes. Maybe all of a sudden you see, hey, there's a deer track. I have never seen one come through here before. Now I have one. What time of the year is it? Things like that. That's what you're looking at when you're dealing with these forest people. They are very subtle in what they do. They You stick out like a sore thumb if you recognize something, okay? Because that's what they're doing. It's only there for the people that are smart enough to see it. Number one, uh, trustworthy is a big thing.
Yeah.
Spiritual, and everybody says, "Well, I'm trustworthy. I'm spiritual." Really, there's nobody in your life that you hate. There's, there's okay. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
All right. You can't have any of that when you go out there. You have to be one with nature. You have to be really accepting of everything that's going on out there, and then let it happen, And then when these things start happening, don't be like the good how can I say this? We'll just say religious person where every Sunday you go to church
Yeah.
because you drank and did whatever all week long and you want forgiveness. And after you get out of church, you're going to go do it again. Don't keep saying, to your God, if you help me through this one here, I swear I'll turn my life over to you. No, you have to really think about this whole situation here and what you're going to do when you go out there, because trust me on this, is if they're there, that's what they're attracted to. They used to trade with the Native Americans.
Hmm.
They broke the covenant. It's a good word to remember because it's going to come in handy in a little while. They broke the covenant with us, okay? Because we started like the French Indian Wars. We started siding with the British.
Yeah.
We started doing the Civil War. They've seen how warlike we can be. They don't want any part of that. They are 100% with nature.
Yeah. Like a pure at heart type of.
Very pure.
Yeah. And do you
Very
prefer the term Sasquatch or Bigfoot, or do you differentiate between the two?
well. Well, I use a lot of them, in the course of a conversation, but really I prefer forest people
Okay.
because they are forest people. When I first started this, everybody out there about 7 years ago was, who or what are they? What are they?
Hmm.
We look it up and we go back in the archives. Everybody was, what are they? Incorrect. Now that has changed. It's taken a lot of podcasts, okay, but that has changed. Now people are understand it's who are they, not what are they. It's who are they. I had the good fortune of having a longer than average sighting. An average sighting is only between 5 and 11 seconds. You wouldn't be able to identify your mother running through the woods at 100 yards away. So don't ever try to tell. You're not a Navy SEAL. You're not going to say, hey, did you catch that? It was only 5 seconds long. Did you catch that? We're dealing with a lot of things there. You're dealing with uncanny valley. For those of you
Hmm.
that don't know what that is,
Yeah.
that's it. The human mind can't accept anything out there that looks other than human but has a human face to it. We automatically, your psyche is going to crash on you, so you don't go off the deep end. You don't want that buffalo jumping off the nickel or that cheese sliding off the cracker.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to make sure you take care of yourself so you can get yourself home.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're driving. Okay, so there's a lot of things that go on psychologically with everybody. That area, you're familiar with that area.
Hmm.
In that area alone, there's, I'd have to say, well over 20 encounters. I knew uh, back then that there's something really different about the area. And as I did spoke with a few people and everything, I had the distinct impression that I was at ground zero, that I was in the center, the epicenter of, let's just say, a large group, okay, a
Hmm.
clan. Everybody wants to call everything a clan. You have family units,
Yeah.
then you have clans. And the reason why I say that is because of the research that's been in that area. there's usually only between 3 and 4 ever cited. Even eyewitness encounters, if we look them up, it's 3 and 4, just like a deer.
Yeah.
She might have two, which is irregular. She's going to lose one. She might have two fawns. Normal is one. So we have to look at it like that. What will survive, and the conditions that it has to survive in. We've destroyed a lot of their habitat, but that area there, the people that I spoke with that were eyewitnesses from that area, they had good eyes on. And one individual, well, more than one actually, but just one particular individual, he was probably only half mile from where I had my encounter and seen it cross the road on his way to work, which is out there. Granville and Cobble Mountain is out there. And he described exactly what I saw. And it was right around the same time. So now, this much time later, I guess it's almost going to be asking the question soon on what's their longevity, how long they actually live, because we do have their footprints, not just us, but these footprints some people have, these researchers, they start off at 6 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, 9 inches. So they don't just all start off at 23 inches. We know that the growth pattern that's going on there. And this one here, I think now I believe the JJ Squatch Man has one track that's around 22 inches.
Wow. I know 18 is kind of the general.
General.
Yeah.
Yeah, general.
But what would you say, like at 22, how old do you think this?
Yeah, I don't even want to put my finger on that. That would be pure conjecture right there. That's just, I don't even want to say my opinion because it wouldn't even count. I hear a lot of people use that too, the terminology expert, and they use that to protect themselves, so they can claim they are in other forms and stuff. And I just want to put this out there for everybody. When they say there are no experts, an expert is somebody that knows more about it than you know. Okay. So you have to verse yourself on everything. For instance, your mother was an expert in tying bows on your shoes, and she taught you, okay, until you met a Boy Scout who knew how to tie more knots, right? And so on and so forth. Even if you go for martial arts, your sensei who teaches you is the expert. Okay, he wears that around his waist, which means doesn't mean anything in a way, because there's obviously somebody that can probably beat him. Okay. But until you meet that person with more knowledge than he has, he is your expert, then that person becomes your expert. Your goal is to become the expert, even more knowledge than the third person you learn down the road. So that it constantly makes you an expert continuing on.
And I would say an expert is somebody is always learning and always moving forward with whatever they are learning.
Exactly. And that's why I'm out here too. And that's why some people are, they forget a little bit is don't go sticking yourself hard on something, because I kind of did that, I kind of looked at it like, well, there isn't anything else there out there was until I met somebody that had one of them dog meat encounters. And I said, well, you know what? I'd have to say, who am I to downplay anybody and anything like that, particularly after what happened to me.
Yeah.
And as I become more affiliated with more people and eyewitness testimonies, I'm finding that, yes, indeed, these things are out there. So that's basically where we are on something like that. But let's solve one puzzle first. And I think this is the greatest puzzle, because if they are what I am going to tell you that they are, then I need you all to lock elbows with me. Okay. This is a movement.
Yeah.
Okay. To stop a tragedy before it happens.
Are you ready to share your story with us?
Yes, that I am. You have any more questions?
I will have questions throughout your story, I'm sure.
Okay.
I don't want to keep you from telling it though for too long.
Okay.
I'm getting myself ready for it.
Okay. Well, that area that I hunted in that morning, I used to do a lot of hunting, as you heard in the beginning, up and down the East Coast, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, all over. And I did a lot of hunting with my brother. I grew up in a family did hunting a lot, and come to find out we're 87% Native American. Okay, Cree Métis, Cree Metis, and with that, there was many things that the elders don't speak about.
Mhm.
Okay, and so just to let everybody know, without me going into that part, is there was a lot of signs that they were there all along, and I overlooked them, and I was told basically nothing about them, not a word about them. They didn't share it with us, and they wouldn't share it with younger people. Okay, I had been hunting legally since I was the age of, I think, 8. All
Mhm.
right. I was carrying my own shotgun, or not my own, I had to borrow a shotgun when I was 10, 9 or 10 years old. So that's a pretty long time in shooting.
Yeah.
Um, so I did a lot of work in the area on tracking, using a topographical map and mapping it out where the deer were, using it, where the deer runs, where the heaviest used deer runs, where they were headed, where they were bedded down, the feeding areas, and things like that. But that morning, it was the last week of hunting season in the state of Massachusetts, and you can only use a shotgun that week. You can't use rifle in Massachusetts, okay? For obvious reasons, and if people don't understand what it is, find a hunter and ask them why, okay? So for reference for people, I used a 12 gauge. It used 2 3/4 inch rounds. Okay. So I only used the buckshot for self defense. I tell people I wouldn't ever attempt to shoot a deer at 40 yards with it. I'm going to hit it, but I'm not going to kill it. I want to put it down immediately.
Mhm.
Okay. That and ethically. Um, I decided that morning that what I was going to do, because it was kind of crispy outside, I came up from the Westfield side, which you know where that is,
Mhm.
and I headed out towards Cobble Mountain Reservoir. And as you go out that way, you're going to pass by an old little store that was on your right, the backside of Stanley Park. And then up the road a ways, there's a farm that has an apple orchard. Yes, that's one of the people that one of the members of the family I get to speak with, where they've had encounters right there. It's in the Westfield News. Long time ago, they found a track right at the bus stop right there. Okay. I washed it all off anyways, but you drive just for a little ways and you can take a right into Cobble Mountain, or you can park right there and cross the street into what they call the Granville Reservoir. That's blocked off. And I would walk in on that side. I chose that morning to come in from that side, the Granville Reservoir side, right across from Cobble Mountain, because that's the way the wind was blowing. It was blowing over the top of that mountain coming down my side. So I proceeded to walk in. I knew where the deer were going to be. I had it all figured out. I had found their bedding area about 3/4 of the way up Drake Mountain. There's an outcropping of boulders, these big boulders up there. And it was right in that outcropping of boulders where I found they had bedded down. So my my idea was to be as quiet as I possibly could, get as close as I possibly could, and jump them. And then I only got to drag my deer downhill. Okay, I got myself a harvest, right? So the because it was crispy out, I let my breath out. You want to check the temperature, the air temperature. So I let my breath out, and I just seen I just seen a little. Sorry, let me shut that off.
Oh, sorry.
Um, I seen a little puff puff of air come out, so I knew that the air temperature had to be like around 32 degrees that morning, and with a light breeze. As I got up towards that position on the mountain, and closing in on it, I heard the deer jump up. It's unmistakable for people when they're laying down. You can tell just between a scared squirrel running through the woods,
Mhm.
or whatever, or a rabbit. But when a deer jumps up, they'll stomp or they'll jump up, and it took off directly away from me. towards the top of that
Hmm.
ridge. That road that I was on is actually part of what they call Uncle Path. That's a famous Indian that he would take settlers from, or not the settlers, but the who is it? The he collects the tax collector in the colonial villages in Connecticut. He would take the tax collector up through the hill towns to collect all the taxes. Okay. And that, I think that path goes for 71 miles, 72
Wow.
miles, somewhere's around there. And the Hilltown, Massachusetts Hilltown Hikers Association actually uses quite a bit of that path. You know, goes up through Montgomery and Russell and
Hmm.
Warnoco, Huntington, Chester, you know, all the way up and through those hill towns and everything. But as they jumped up and they took off from me, I kind of had my heart kind of fell a little bit. Like you know, the only chance I'm going to get of getting a harvest today is to try to outfox the deer. So my objective, knowing the area, because that road was going to run parallel to that ridge line,
Hmm.
and it was headed back down towards the apple orchard, which I said I passed by on the way up over there. So I was going to try to get out in front of them and set up my ambush and wait for them at a particular spot. As they were walking, it's like stalking. Okay. I was trying to get out in front of them, but I didn't want them to hear me. And if they heard me, I want them to mistake me not for a human being, not for having two legs, but four legs. Okay. Not bipedal. Okay. Four legged. And in order to do that, you got to watch where you're stepping. You know, it was a little bit of frost on the leaves and stuff,
Yeah.
so that would give me away. But fortunately, there was a lot of rocky areas, flat rocks that I could walk on. They were like sandy on there. So I'm going to walk toe heel. I'm going to take the weight off of my heel and let it down slowly. So if I do step on something, I'm not going to break a twig or
Hmm.
anything like that. And I'm going to sound four-legged,
Yeah.
not two-legged.
Less human, if you will. Yes.
Exactly. So I figure I think it was only probably about 200 yards I had to get out in front of them. And as I proceeded to do that, I could hear them on my right hand side. I couldn't see them because that ridge line just runs so beautifully right there. They're just on the other side and they couldn't see me. And they weren't acting scared. I could tell by the way they were walking that they were more like still listening, but browsing. Okay. I took that was my advantage. But in hindsight, later on, I remember something on the other side of them that was heavy. Okay. But I washed it off. I just felt there was probably a buck. He's not going to be with those does at that point or whatever. Maybe, who knows? He's just following them. I managed to get out in front of him. At the point that I get out in front of him, that pathway that I was on actually takes a bit of a turn. We call it a dog leg.
Hmm.
Okay. And it goes back down basically on the other side of Drake Mountain, back almost on itself. Okay. That's where Drake Brook comes out of the ground up there on the top. And right on that corner, there's a stone wall, you know, rickety stone wall, but it goes between the path that I was on and that dog leg. Between the stone wall and the corner of that path is where I'm going to set up. That's what I had in my mind. If I make it, if everything works out, I'm going to set up right there. Okay. It had some old pines. When I say old pines or old trees, I mean big, thick ones. Not a lot of them, but some big, thick ones there, you know. I get out in front of them, and right as I get on the corner of that dog leg, I look to make sure there wasn't any squirrels or chipmunks or, you know, grouse or woodcock or whatever you have.
Hmm.
Deer, maybe another deer laying down. There wasn't anything there. There wasn't anything there. So I knew that I was pretty good. I could hear them coming. They were stopping and moving. They were browsing still. And I crouched down just a little bit, drew up my shotgun right at that stone wall, and I'm going to wait for them to come over the stone wall. That's when I picked up movement on my 9 o'clock on my peripheral. Just out of the corner of my eye, I picked up some movement at about the 35-yard mark. We measured that off on Pro Google Earth on
Hmm.
Earth Pro, I think it is. And we dropped pins on my position for one of the shows that I did, and where I claimed that this forest person was, which I didn't know that's what it was to start with,
Yeah.
and it came up at 38 yards.
Wow.
So that's pretty close for me.
Yeah.
It substantiated a lot for me. It vindicated me for anybody wanting to listen. Okay. But I noticed movement, so I just looked over just a little bit. I still got my 12 gauge pointed at that stone wall because they could come over that stone wall at any time. And if this one got up to take off and they came over, they would scatter to the four winds, and who knows what
Yeah.
would have, I probably might not have gotten one because they would have been running all over the place. From my vantage point, and the wind was still kind of blowing at me. From my vantage point, um, it appeared that it was could be a deer laying down next to the tree, with its head on the other side of the tree, which I couldn't see because all I could see was basically outline like it was stretched out, you know. So,
Okay.
and I know in the past people have said, well, that's not right. But what I'm about to tell you is, I was told when I was a kid, do not shoot a deer that was laying down. Don't shoot a sleeping deer. Because if you do that, then when you get down to the check-in station, they're going to know you shot a sleeping deer and you're going to be in trouble. So I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless, that's what was given to me. That's what was told to me, and
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
It sticks with you.
Right. So it started scrunching up a little bit. I'm still trying to maintain, if people can understand that, is it going to get up? What's it going to do here? Because once it gets up, I'll shoot it. If
Yeah.
it's here, I'll shoot it, you know. But I'm still trying to watch those for those deer that are going to be coming over that stone wall because I can still hear them grazing. I'm trying to pay attention and maintain cognizance of both areas, and it scrunched up more to the tree. I caught it again. It scrunched up more to the tree. Now I know that it is not a deer. I'm thinking this is a big bodied animal. This has got to be a bear. It's got to be a bear. People say, well, how can you mistake a bear? You know what? Talk to me about it, because you know how many forums I'm on, and I see people draw red circles around stumps
Yeah.
and stuff, and you don't even go over and check it out. Trust me, you can mistake a stump for a deer. I've seen people shoot stumps. Okay. So, yeah, you got to be sure of what you're doing. Okay. But it started scrunching up to that tree more. I'm figuring this is a bear. So now I'm bringing my shotgun right on it because
Yeah.
I don't need a mama bear. I don't know where she came from. Was she laying there? I didn't see her when I came up. Did I somehow miss this? So I'm fighting these things in my head. I'm trying to put this peg in a hole. Okay. And I'm just a little bit worried that it's a bear and it could bum rush me. And at this range here, I'm probably going to have to kneel down to shoot it, because you want to get a level shot
Yeah.
off, you know? And it scrunches up to the tree more. Now I can hear the deer on the other side. They're very close to that stone wall. I can't see them. Now it's more of the silhouette, the form of a man, even though it has its head around the other side of that tree. Now I'm saying to myself, geez, I've got another hunter here. I didn't see him to begin with. I'm going to need to move my position a little bit. I don't want to be walking around,
Yeah.
and then be spotted by the deer on the other side of that stone wall. So I'm going to just kind of shuffle up a little bit, just move up. Even though I'm crouched down, I want to move up just a little bit, because this is obviously a guy. No orange on him, but then again, I'm not wearing orange, and I never did. It kind of perplexed me that it would have been a guy right off the bat anyways, because where I went in, it's very steep in history, very steep in legend. A lot of people, even to this day, don't like going there. They don't even like hiking up around there because trail markers mysteriously get torn down.
And all this is just going through your head in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know how long it was, but yeah, I'm figuring it all out.
Yeah.
Decide what I'm going to do is move my position up just a little bit because I'm crouched down, but I don't want to move much. I want to make sure that I'm in this guy's peripheral vision because if the deer come over that stone wall, and they will, I don't, because he has his head on the other side of that tree. I don't want him all of a sudden coming around my side and putting buckshot on me, putting a bunch of holes
Yeah.
in my clothes and stuff, or even me for that fact, you know. So I decide I'm going to move up just a couple feet, maybe two and a half, maybe 3 feet. I don't want to try to get away with too much there, you know. And that way, there I'll be a little bit less concerned about the situation. Well, I noticed he's getting up even more. Now he's kind of got my attention because this is a big guy. This is a really big guy, and I've been in. I used to train fighters, and I've been in. You know, so a lot of people say I've been in a lot of fights. I've literally been, martial art training in a whole bunch of them. Okay, many tournaments. All right, and my weight class, just to give you an idea, I'm 6'3". My weight class started at 192, and it went to open. It was open class at
Oh
265.
wow.
I weighed 196 pounds. So I was like the infant in that weight
Yeah.
class,
So when you
right?
say it's a big guy, to you, it's a big guy. Is a
Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
some big guys.
yeah,
Okay, this is a big guy, so I'm just saying to myself, I'm just wondering. I'm saying, man, this is a really huge guy. So when this is all over with, I hope he comes over to me, or I get to go over to him, or something. But if he walks away, then I need something on that tree to measure up, because now he's on the tree with his right arm on the tree, around the tree, with his head on the left hand side of that tree, and I'm looking for a branch, a twig, something on that tree, and I spot a piece of moss. So I put it right at the seen it, and I marked it off in my memory. I'm like, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And hopefully I can get it to go over there and see for myself how tall this guy really is.
yeah.
And that's when all hell broke loose on the other side of that stone wall. It was, I tell people, uh, it, there was limbs breaking, not branches. These were limbs. I heard boulders clacking over there. It sounded like something came out of the trees and just jumped on these deer on the other side. It was just a knockdown, drag out. I mean,
Like a bull rush type of
hell,
situation.
hellacious
Yeah.
battle royale going on over
Wow.
there. And he put his head around my side of the tree, and he looked straight. He was looking straight over that stone wall, and sure enough, he picked me up in his peripheral. So if he would have been a hunter, I would have been a-okay. That's what I had planned to anyways. But I'm looking at him, and I'm saying to myself, this is not a guy. This is not right. This is I'm just trying to figure this whole thing out right then and there. He caught me in his peripheral, and he took a little glance over at me, and then he put his looked back over that stone wall, and he snapped his head right back at me. Like, the look on his face was, he couldn't believe that I was. Now I'm standing. I'm standing, and he snapped his head on me and looked at me, and I'm looking at him, and I knew in that instant right there what he was. Uh, I've never seen one before. I didn't know what to expect. I seen the Patty film. I
Yeah.
just figured, hey, okay, it's Patty. They had one out there in California, wherever it happened, and that's probably it. And it's probably gone now. It was the only one that died of old age or whatever. Hopefully, it was old age, And I said, but I'm looking at this thing, and I'm saying, I knew when he snapped his head back towards me, he faced off to me. He broadsided me. He stuck his right leg around that tree. He's holding onto the tree now with his left hand and arm, and he swings that left leg around that tree so he can broadside me, look directly at me, face off to me. He's huge. He's absolutely huge. Even at that distance, I could tell what it was. I knew I was looking at, and that was probably the first time I used that word because I didn't know any other words. I didn't ever research them or anything.
Yeah.
That was a Sasquatch. I didn't know what to expect. Only the fact that this thing was checking me out. I'm checking him out, and I get the 12 gauge pointed at him, and he puts both hands out in front of him. and he's got his elbows tucked in at his waist level. He's got his hands between his chest and his waist. His hands are only about maybe, shoulder width apart, maybe like that. And fingers together, palms facing me, fingers facing towards the sky. And he pumps them twice at me. I would have been A-okay if he would have just turned around and left. I would have said, man, I've seen a Sasquatch and whoa. But he does that. Now I'm doing a wellness check on myself. I'm doing a body check. I'm like, is this really going on with me here? I'm checking the air temperature again. I'm checking, there's a compass. That was a hand-me-down shotgun. There was a compass mounted on the shotgun. I don't think that they work on steel, compasses or whatever, but I had a wristwatch on. I checked my wristwatch. I don't remember the time of the day. I remember that it was 11 minutes, 10 to 11 minutes after the hour, though. What hour it was, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say. I'm not even going to make a guess at that.
Yeah.
And he pumps his hands twice. I got my shotgun right on him, and I start lowering my shotgun because the look on its face was not angry or anything. He, from the get-go, he didn't expect me to be standing there. He didn't know how I got there.
Yep.
What I was feeling. And he started walking towards me. And of course, I was thinking to myself, what's going to go on here? How far are we going to go here? And I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to have to shoot or anything and it changes its mind, it's going to do anything to me, I need to do it ASAP. Okay. That's not what happened. He took a couple steps after he did that move with his hands, and he actually looked at me like, do I understand?
Exactly.
Like he's looking at me like a toddler, like, you understand what mommy and daddy are trying to tell you here? Hold on a second. He takes, I call it ancient language evolution. It's just a body move that chimps use, orangutans use. It's
Mm-hmm.
right hand, fist closed, pointer finger out, pointed directly at my chest, right to the middle of my chest, and he points back to his chest. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking that to mean that we're equal, because you don't go and point to your own chest. Walk into a bar, try it. Point to your own, find out the person that's in the worst mood in that place. Point to your own chest and point at them like that. And usually what happens. He pointed to me first. The interpretation that I understand was that we were equal. He was seeing me as an equal or a master of the woods, that we were brothers. Okay.
And not in a threatening way at all.
Right. And so I'm really feeling okay.
Yep.
This. He again looks at me like, do I understand? And he takes more steps towards me. And he takes his hands, elbows in at the waist, arms, rest of his arms out there, like parallel to the ground, with his palms facing down. Same width apart, but his palms facing down. Still looking at me, and then he turned his palms facing up. So I'm thinking, okay, what this means is, and obvious, that was obvious to me, is he had no food. And they were looking for food. And that's when I kind of got the drift that they were hunting the same deer as me. Okay. And it's I'm glad that I didn't shoot, because I'm not certain but from the ruckus that was going on, and it was still going on over there. It was like unbelievable, a little bit tamed down a little bit, but there was still stuff going on over there. And he proceeded to walk towards me some more.
How close would you say at this point now?
More than half the distance from the 35-yard mark or 38-yard mark. To me, he's more than half that distance. He's already produced 3 hand signals to me. And I'm thinking at that point, there's obviously, because he's not stopping, there's obviously going to come a time that I'm going to have to parlay something, try to understand what's going on, and parlay some of this sign language back, so I'm still racking this through my mind. I remember during this encounter that a plane flew over me going to Bradley International Airport. I mean, I was checking everything out. I'm like, wow, you know, and he continues to walk toward me after showing me the hand signal for no food. He was looking for food, and he proceeds to walk closer to me, and he points over my shoulder, over my it would be his left, my
Hmm.
right, and then back over to my opposite shoulder, again with that ancient language love uh, uh, evolution with that finger and that hand, okay, and I took that to mean, well, under the circumstances, where the heck did you come from? Because the double take on me. I mean, who? People tell me, well, this is what it is. He was trying to tell you were surrounded. No, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that he was the only one that knew that I was there.
Hmm.
Okay, and you'll find this out in a minute or two here. But now I know that he's really close to me. I carried a handgun on me also for protection or survival.
Hmm.
So I had that on my right hip, and he's exceptionally close to me, where I used to have a really hard time relaying this to some people because I really had to get over how close he was. I'm sucking in information on what he looks like. At half the distance, I could see he had blue eyes, and his eyes were husky blue, like this pretty ice blue, husky
Hmm.
blue. His hair was 5 inches to 6 inches long in different parts of the body. Very, very, very muscular, ripped. Okay. Where you have hair on the back of your hands, they have hair in the exact same locations. Where you don't, they don't. His forearm, I seen his forearms
Hmm.
because he gets that close to me now. I'm standing. Well, when he stuck his hand out, because he did, he stuck his hand out to me. Uh, I seen the back of his hand. I seen his fingernails, very clean. What I imagined it being black hair, and and the complexion, his complexion was dark, like ashy, black brown, like some people with tans, like maybe Jamaican or whatever,
Hmm.
kind of flippity flops,
Yep.
and then on the light and everything. And at 35 yards, I couldn't tell where the hair started on his face and where it ended. It blended in that well. What I
Wow.
thought was black hair was not black hair, because now he's close enough to me when he stuck his hand out to me that the sun just glinted off his hair, and I could see the like the reddish tint you get off of brown hair, dark
Yeah,
brown
kind of
hair.
like a highlight.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was that close, and I had to look down between the two of us. It was right basically under my face, like almost looking straight down for me. He stuck his hand out to me, and his palm, back of his hand, then he turned his palm up, and he obviously wanted me to look at his palm. So I was looking at his palm, but now I'm starting to become concerned a little bit more, trying to take my gaze off of him, you know. Also because of the point where I was standing, I'm 6'3". I was below his shoulder, just a little
Wow.
bit above his bicep. Okay. And I started dropping my hand down to my handgun. And for people out there that know how to fight, you don't throw your shoulder and then throw the punch. Okay. You try not to throw the shoulder. So I'm trying to be um, cool about it,
Yeah.
get my hand down to my handgun without him noticing me moving my arm, and my palm was just touching the grip on my handgun, and he noticed it, and he didn't like it. He took his other hand, his left hand, and he tapped his right hand. He tapped it. He was like, no, look at my palm. So I get the message. I'm looking at his palm. I'm studying his palm,
Yeah.
and his palms look just like our palm.
That's what I was going to ask with like fingerprint whirls and
Everything pretty much from what I could see. People say, what about the thumb and everything? Well,
hmm
they're body proportionate. Okay, it looked like a human hand. Think about it, what they can do and stuff.
yeah.
Um, so he did that with his finger on his palm, and I relinquished what I was going to do and study his palm. The only thing I noticed different about his palm was there was no lifeline. And I've heard people say to me, well, there's people born with no lifeline. Cool. All right, that's great. Okay. Well, I'm just telling you that he had no lifeline. Now, other people have asked me if he had a scar. Interesting question because I don't remember that. Should I have been looking for a scar? Maybe it would have stuck out. Maybe if I had regressive hypnosis, I might remember it
Yeah.
because that is a sign of the covenant. Is that would have been a sign of that he had a covenant with man or whatever. And that's what I've learned. Some people will understand that. We used to do that when we were kids, our generation, called blood brothers. You cut your finger and the other guy cut his finger and touch and you be
Exactly. Yep.
blood brothers. Okay. That's a covenant. I took it upon myself at that point to parlay some of those hand signals back to him. And I gave the signal that, we were brothers, or whatever people want to interpret that to mean. I gave the half a hand signal that I had no food. Okay. And then I pointed over to his shoulders the way he pointed my shoulders. And that's when things changed a little bit. He looked at me and nodded at me. And then he turned just a little bit to face over that stone wall. And he brought both his hands up to his mouth like megaphone style. And he let out 3 loud whoops. And each one was a second and a half in between each one. I'm very good. I play music.
Hmm.
You play music or shoot guns, you know what rhythm is, and you can probably figure that out really quickly. And he looked back at me and he nodded his head at me. And then he looked back over that stone wall because the ruckus had ended and everything. And he let out a whistle, and the whistles sounded just like a human being. It sounded just like people that would have been in my hunting party, how we would communicate back and forth to each other, where each other was, if we had spotted a track, a fresh sign, whatever, we wanted them to come over. So he made this whistle noise like, and he did a hand signal for whomever or whatever was on that stone wall to go back in the direction that he originally came from. With his right hand, he motioned to go in that direction. And he looked back at me again and he bowed his head to me. And he turned and he went back directly towards that tree where he first was. He didn't run, he didn't speed walk. He kind of very smoothly, kind of casually walked over. I just stood there. I'm thinking to myself, man, I want to see where they're going. I want to see where, well, it wasn't they at the then, yeah, but you
Yeah.
can hear that. I want to see where he's going, what's going to happen. I want to follow him and see, where do they stay? They stay in caves. I mean, I never even knew. So he got out to about the 55, 55-yard mark, maybe a little bit better. And again, we dropped advanced Google Earth pins on my location and his location, and it was around 58, 59 yards.
Hmm.
That was pretty accurate. And he turned basically towards that stone wall, but towards me. So like almost like on a 45. Right when he got there, and that's when all heck just kind of broke loose and there's that stone wall again. It sounded like a rhinoceros coming through those saplings because it was beech nuts on the other side. And that's what the deer, I think, were browsing on before they were obviously attacked. And I believe that this one here was set up on a pinch point, an ambush point. So that if anything got over that stone wall, its objective was to end it right there, to chase it down and end it right there. But this thing was coming. And it was going to, I could tell by the sound that it was going to not cross a stone wall, but it was going to cross that dog leg and it would have to jump Drake Brook to head over to his direction. So that would have been, I figured, probably close to a 100-yard run anyways. And I caught a glimpse of some brown, like a cinnamon colored. And as it crossed that little pathways, I could make out what it was. at that point. I kind of already knew that there was more than one, and it was definitely another one coming. And this thing was elbows and heels, and it was moving, it was trucking, and it was just headed right towards that one there. I've shot deer on the run, and I can tell you right now that would have been a hell of a thing to try to shoot. We do have eyewitness testimonies that we're fortunate to be able to clock one. They had the right frame of mind to actually look down at their speedometer while it was running down the side of the road, and they clocked it at 52.
Oh,
So
wow.
I can tell you right now, from what I seen, and that verified it for me too, because what I seen, the speed of this thing, it could easily run a deer down,
Yeah.
very easily run a deer down. So it it got to the other one, and they had this little conversation. They were both sort of kind of facing each other, but still facing in my direction, if you can imagine that, like almost on a 45 to me.
Hmm.
And that I call it littler one because it was littler than that one there. That one there was still, the littler one was still bigger than me. It went over that one's shoulder, but it wasn't, it, somewhere's over his shoulder, I should say. It was
Yeah.
bigger than me, obviously. And they started having this little conversation. And I'd say about a year or two or so later, it's the first time I heard the Sierra sounds. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to give Ron Moorhead a phone call. He's still on my bucket list. I wanted to say, Ron, I know, buddy, you didn't see him. I don't think you've seen him. I never heard you say that you did. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's them.
Hmm.
That's them because that's what they sound like. I watched them do that.
Wow.
So you have three sounds that happened during my encounter. And all three of those sounds, nobody's ever seen them do. The whoop,
Yep.
the whistle, and the Sierra sounds. And some people say, well, why don't they always sound the same when people record them? Well, let's just go down and visit some people in Georgia and see if they sound like people from Boston.
Exactly.
We'll give them the same thing to talk about. Let's just, let's deal with the inflection here and their tone of voice. Are they arguing or what's going on?
Hmm.
There's a lot of things going on there. Scott Nelson proved it's a language. Okay, it's a language. Some people want to put the man down, but it's like you can't put him down. He's got the credentials. Don't be ridiculous. Okay, but that big one there. They were having like a little chit chat, and the big one pointed me out, ratted me out, pointed right at me. And that littler one had to crouch down a little bit and look underneath this part of this branch on this sapling and stuff and look right at me and look back at the big one again, and it snapped its head back at me. So I'm thinking that the big one, people told me this, so it sounds logical that the big one was chewing the other one out. Like, how did he get by you? Where did he come from? Didn't you know
Hmm.
he was here? He was in the wide open,
That's
like,
what I was thinking when you were talking. Like it was kind of like the elder
yeah,
teaching the younger, like, look, this is what you need to watch out for out here.
exactly. Like look at this guy. Look at him. He's right over there. You can picture it in your mind, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
after that happened, the bigger one, the larger one there, the darker colored one. Um, Again, he takes that right hand, closed fist, pointer finger out, and he points to that little one right to its chest, and then he points to do a flanking maneuver on me, a semicircle to my right, to that one, and he points to his own chest on what he's going to do, and he's going to do a flanking maneuver, what appeared to be a flanking maneuver to my other side, circular motion to my other side. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Was that for my own behalf that it's trying to tell me don't follow? That's the thing that I kind of got, and I
Yeah.
also got the idea that I don't need to go over and check to see the harvest that they got over there. That's theirs. I'm
Yeah.
not going to try to take it away. Instead, I chose to walk over to the tree where it all started because I knew where the piece of moss was on that tree. So up until I came out with this encounter, people were like, "Oh, they're 15 feet tall. They're 25. They're 30 feet tall." Stop it, please. Maybe it's very, very feasible when you get up in, up north, further up into Canada because of the depth of the snow and everything else. Like look at moose and everything like that.
Hmm.
Look at wolves; they have longer legs, So it could be, but I'm just telling you that, as a trained observer, this was my objective. And I walked over to that tree as concerned as I was now. And I found my mark on the tree. And I stood next to the tree, facing the tree, put my hand on top of my head, took a little bit of a step back. And then I measured up from my hand to that little piece of moss. And I'd come up with 7 foot 8 inches tall. And I'd say that he was north of 500 pounds, extremely fit, extremely ripped. Uh, any wrestler that you've ever seen on TV or any place, I can guarantee you that this forest person could have made a spear out of them, just picked them up and used them to chuck them, and I'm not saying 5 feet or 10 feet, I'm saying chuck the guy,
Yeah.
But I also looked for impressions in the ground. There was not a lot of foliage, but ferns, type ferns,
Hmm.
were there that appeared to be matted down where it went through. So I didn't have a foot impression, but I could see where it definitely went through, just using some basic tracking knowledge. I figured I need to measure the distance on the stride because it was a relaxed stride. And that I can be able to correlate when asked. Hopefully, the day comes when people ask me to recount this testimony, recount my story to them. And it has.
Yeah.
It has. So I tried to replicate the stride and I couldn't,
Wow.
So I tried to do a little jump into it, couldn't. So I backed up a little bit and tried to do because I'm pressed for time, a little bit of a run to start and jump into the impression that I seen there. And I still couldn't. So I knew that it was much taller than me, and that would totally relate to what I measured off on the tree.
Yeah.
And that's why I did all those things, so I would have all of this evidence for everybody. We don't need a DB, folks. Okay, we need to do the research right because these things are highly intelligent, and I know that people are going to ask me, for pictures and this and that. Well, when AI is not intellectual property. Artwork is.
Hmm.
I have intellectual property. Okay. I do have an Etsy store. I'll mention it in the end for the people that are interested rather than have something that's AI, have the real McCoy.
Exactly.
Okay? And when people approach you, tell them the intelligence value of these. And this is the reason why, because they are like us. They are like Darwin made the tree, the train there with the missing link. Well, let me ask everybody listening, okay? Because a lot of people don't understand it. He was commissioned to do that. So being commissioned to do that, he couldn't put in his own things in there. They wanted him to do certain things. Well, he did. He did it in such a way that it just goes unknown to people. What he did is he put in the missing link. He said, "There's a missing link." Let me ask you all, how can you know if something's missing if you don't know what it is? This is what they look like. They look very human-like. They look like a cross between a Native American, a caveman, or Neanderthal, and Indian.
So there's a
Okay.
heavy brow ridge, you're saying, right?
Oh
With the
yeah,
Neanderthal look.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, its nose was not ape-like.
Hmm.
Okay, its nose was yes pushed in a little bit. I guess you'd say flared out a little bit, but it wasn't like an ape.
Yeah.
I forget what they call that, and that's a disadvantage that you have when you're talking to an artist and everything. You have to know that lingo in order to be telling them. I was fortunate this person would actually walk me through all this and show me different noses and the description, what this was, and everything else. Okay, but that's pretty much it. You'll get to see some of this stuff at the Cobble Mountain Bigfoot Fest.
Yeah.
Is I'm probably only going to have because we're not going to carry a lot of inventory. What do I carry? I don't have that kind of money to do these things, So we're going to teach people how to order on their phone, and it is, the site is called New England Encounters, all lowercase. New England Encounters .etsy.com, and then it's Sasquatch uses sign language. And You'll be able to pick it out on there.
I'll also put that in the description of the video when we post this, so everybody has an easier link to go to it.
Yes. You got some
So
questions for me, I
I
bet.
do. I very much do. This is a Sasquatch encounter that has so many different variables and factions to it that is unlike anything I had ever heard. When I first heard your story prior to tonight, it just, the sign language aspect of it shows intelligence, even respect. I think that you you passing through them in that sense and kind of getting to where you got and surprising them with the conversation they had, even seems like the elder, the larger one, the elder one, was giving you a respect for the fact that how that happened.
Yeah.
Like respecting you in the fact that you're a hunter like they are, you know the woods like they are, and you didn't attack them like I'm sure they've possibly run into in the past. The blue eyes situation, do you think that is, I guess, a genetic anomaly? Or do you think it's kind of when people get older, sometimes like people hit a certain age and they get kind of like the film, the cataracts film?
No, it's actually interesting. I think people should actually seriously uh research, Google blue-eyed people, and I think you're going to find something really strange there. I will say this. I never knew that they were always around me, but I was in, we went to a powwow in, I believe it might have been Georgia. I'm not quite sure. And I was blessed to meet somebody at this powwow. I needed somebody to speak to. So I wanted to speak to the medicine woman, the storyteller, the keeper of the history. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the Native American police, I just stood in the middle of the field and was having my cornbread. And they came over and started talking with me. I told them what I was hoping for. And they thought they recognized me. But long story short, they brought her over to me. And she said, could you wait right here with them while I go out back? I think I have somebody who might want to meet you. And she left and she came back, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes later. And she came over to me and she said, follow me. She led me out through the tent area. And in the back, there was a big tent there. And inside that tent area, there was you got the hides and everything to make your own little private room. There was one that she brought me over to, and inside that little room area was a gentleman known by the name of Chief Ernest. He's the great great grandson of, I believe, Sitting Bull. So I sat down one on one with him and had a conversation about what had happened. And he told me many things, but one of the things that he told me is that they have always known me. And they have always watched out for me. Some people say, well, watch out for you for what? I don't know, but I've always been at peace in the woods. I've never feared anything
Yep.
in the woods. I've never had any problem, maybe against dog man or who knows what, because who knows what's really everything is out there.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that he was alluding to was the fact is, well, he came out and he said it. He said that you walk in two worlds. Is That's what had happened to me that day, because it's not just enough to walk like a four-legged animal. It's to imagine yourself as being that four-legged animal. Good hunter, that is exactly what they do. So all those things were meant something to me. They're very, very intelligent, far more than what we believe. And that's why you're not just going to walk into the woods. Some people say, well, you're not going to see them unless they want you to see them. Well, I'm here to tell you that wasn't a planned out thing by me.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely wasn't a planned out thing by them. And not a one of them, I don't know how many more there were, but not a one of them seen me that day. And I don't know why, because I was definitely in the open. I thought I was just not in the view of the deer, which, particularly if you were in a tree, you probably would have seen me coming up that pathway. But what happened happened. You have another question for me?
I do. I have some stuff over here. When you, so this was in the 80s, late 80s.
Yeah, mid to late
Yeah.
80s. Yeah.
And that explains if anybody's wondering why, oh, you didn't take a picture, you didn't have your phone with you, you didn't have your camera with you. This wasn't a time where that was prevalent at the,
Well, that's true. But you know what? I have something better. I have the actual artwork that took 7 months to develop. Okay.
and the
Uh,
memories of it, which are
no,
even
I,
better.
I was a hunter. I wished I would have had a phone on me that would have done something like that.
Do you think that would have changed the encounter if you tried to take a picture?
well, I didn't know anything about him at the time. So I couldn't tell you that for sure, even right now today.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have, but that would be just an opinion or
Yeah. Conjuncture after the fact.
but and I hate to do that for people.
Yeah.
They decide for themselves. Things happen for a reason, and the reason is so that you and your listeners can hear this story. That these things, this is what they are. I'm telling you, and there are other people out there who've had close encounters, very close. If you look at your class A, B, and
Hmm.
C, you'll find that class A doesn't even classify this. The class A is not even describing this here.
No, the communication, the use of
The
the
distance
res,
that was, the
the
length of time.
yeah, even the respect between you and the
Right,
creature at the time, I think.
right. Yeah,
The fact that you interrupted maybe like a teaching of a hunting for a younger
yeah,
creature is
yeah,
mind blowing.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was just all meant to be. And
Yeah.
that's I look at this right here. It was meant for whoever's listening to hear this and to understand and lock elbows
Hmm.
and push this forward, just to let people know. People say, well, why doesn't the government come out and talk about this? Well, what do we call that when people go to Congress and they want to talk to the senators or the congressmen and they get a lot of money? What do we call that? Okay. And they give them a lot of money just to hush hush.
Yeah.
I can tell you this right now for everybody listening here. If you go into that Cobble Mountain region, okay, the Army National Guard, more than likely, because they used to, they will come in there with a helicopter. You are not supposed to be there. So obviously they have ground monitors there. And I say that because I know people that have been picked up out there fishing. I've gone in there one time and had them try to come in and get myself and somebody else out of there. They didn't find us. We got out of there, but they knew right where we were.
Hmm.
So therefore, they must have ground sensors. So if you have ground sensors in there and you knew where I was or they were, and don't you think that they would also know that these things are in there
Yeah.
too? They don't want to tell you that because then we would have to set aside land for them. We couldn't chop down all these trees.
Exactly. That's when the conservation event has to
That's
start.
right. We couldn't frack for oil
Yep.
like that. That's the reason why. People can come up with whatever grandeur thought they want on the reason why, but I'm telling you right now, that is the reason why. Because this land is taken, and they don't want to have to give the land back to the forest people.
Hmm.
They truly
Yeah.
don't.
They don't gain anything from acknowledging the existence whatsoever.
Right. What else you got?
I do have a question for you so you can explain to people where you're going to be next month so they can see you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be at the Cobble Mountain uh, Critter Festival. They call it the Critter Festival because it's really it used to be called. There was a legend up there called Wild Willie, which I never believed in, and then there's the Cobble Mountain Critter, okay, which actually this festival will be going on about 2 miles from where I had my encounter, and it will be at the Camp Moses Scout Reservation in Russell, Massachusetts. You will be there.
I will be.
The Vogel brothers. There's going to be a lot of people there. It is the first one of its kind in the area, and I kind of envisioned this, just putting it out there when I had my encounter. Someday I was going to be able to tell it to the people, and that they were going to hear this, and I'd be able to give it to the kids. And
Hmm.
there's kids there, and it's actually kind of using this for to raise money for the children, the kids programs in the
Yeah.
different schools by the Vogel brothers for their search and rescue to teach kids search and rescue, first aid, mountaineering, you name it.
For everybody that's listening, June 7th, you will be able to
Yeah.
meet Ernie in person at the
Yes.
Cobble Mountain Critter Festival. Get your tickets online only.
Yes.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for tonight.
Yep.
I
Can't
enjoyed
wait.
this time. Oh,
Go
please, go ahead.
and sorry. You go to New England Encounters, all lowercase letters, New England Encounters .etsy.com. Okay. And just take a look at it. You'll know what I do have some AI there, but they're using a little bit of the sign language. Like
Mhm.
but anything that you see there, I think it's on the t-shirts. You'll know that it's the real McCoy. And you can have that put on anything that you want. Okay. Because I'm not going to carry all this inventory because you
Yeah,
get to pay Etsy or Etsy, whatever you want to say, for all of that for each little thing. So whatever you can imagine is on there. And the hats right now are embroidered.
oh, very nice.
Okay, with I think it says New England Encounters on that.
Hmm.
So, but we're all going to be there at the festival.
Yeah, it's going to
We're
be
all,
a
yeah,
good time.
it's going to be a fantastic time, and that place is historical, anyways. Camp Moses is something for everybody to think about, and that's where some of this actually started at one time. And at that point, it was known as Wild Willie. And they used to tell it around the campfires, and everybody used to go, "Oh!" But it's like, I never believed in it, but here it is, everybody, for you. So please come and support us. If you can't do it, if you can't make it, then consider making a contribution to it
Yeah,
also to help these kids out. Every kid in every one of the schools in the surrounding areas are hurting for the programs and everything, and to teach them about the watershed and
yeah.
everything is a real gift to them.